Good morning, everyone, or perhaps not morning where you are. We deliberately held this session at 8 a.m. New York time to accommodate our many international applicants, because as you know, this is a global master's program, and we have many, many international students, including two of our alumni here today. So before we get started discussing the Committee on Global Thought MA program, I'm just going to introduce our panelists. I can start with myself. My name is Sarah Miller Davenport. I'm the graduate program director. I wear many hats in that capacity. I'm a historian. I teach electives. I teach the MA seminar. I'm also very involved in the admissions process. I do a lot of essay advising and other administrative roles related to the MA program. Next, I will introduce Laura Neitzel. Dr. Laura Neitzel is Senior Fellow in Global Thought. She teaches a number of undergraduate courses as well as graduate courses for CGT, including the MA Seminar in Global Thought and Local and Global Worlds. Neitzel also directs the Youth in a Changing World project. She is a historian of modern Japan who is interested in the national and global contexts that shape the ways people envision their futures and articulate their aspirations and disappointments. She is the author of The Life We Longed For, Danshi Housing, and the Middle Class Dream in Post-War Japan. Next, I'll introduce Junji Ren, who is Communications Manager of Global Economy and Development at the Brookings Institution. He's a Global Thought alum from 2021. And Junji is a Communications Manager at the Brookings Institutions, and he oversees research publications and dissemination, public events, multimedia products, and external media relations. He devises and implements communication strategies for research scholars and teams in areas relating to sustainable development, international development finance, macroeconomic policies, trade, technology, and workforce development. So he also wears many hats and is certainly applying his skills gained at CGT to his current job. Next, I'll introduce Shagun Sethi. She is the Director of Global Leadership at OneShared.world, Program Manager at WeDo, and Academic Research Fellow at Leading Cities. Shagun also serves as Director for Global Leadership for One Shared World, and her work has been recognized on India's A-list. She is a passionate feminist and has brought her expertise in research to urban design and serves as a research fellow at Leading Cities Boston. So she also wears many hats, like many of us here. She's been a featured speaker on many panels, including for CNN International, NewsX, Dorsharan, and WARC, where she shares her expertise on all things gender, inclusivity, environment, and development. She's also published. She's a published author. She's published Walk with Women, Agents of Change, and Prior Effects Toward Meta-Universe Constitution, and has been an invited lecturer at Columbia and at various panels at universities and colleges in the United States. So that's our panel. You can read a bit more detail about our biographies on the CGT website. But I want to we don't have a ton of time here, so I want to get started and jump right into questions. So I'm going to throw this out to Shagun and Junji first. What originally drew you to CGT, and why did you choose this program over other MAs? And Shagun, I'll throw it to you first.
Thanks, Sarah. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me, and I want to say hi to everyone who's watching. This is one of the best decisions you're going to take, and we're going to talk about why if you end up applying. But the reason I chose the MA in Global Thought, when I was applying for my master's programs, I was looking for something that is interdisciplinary. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in my life. I wasn't sure, I hadn't nailed it down, and I wanted something that gave me exposure in different fields, in different academic subjects, but at the same time gave me the tools and the skills required that you go to a graduate school for. And so when I was doing my research and came across a bunch of programs, I actually missed Global Thought in the first sweep that I did for Columbia, and I found some international relations program, I don't even know where. And so when I was starting to fill out the forms, when you put in your demographic details way back in like August, September, I had to choose two programs. So I think the Columbia form asked you to choose two programs, and I didn't have a second. And so I was like, okay, I have no idea what I'm going to choose. And that's when I came across global thought. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And so I went on the website and I remember reading the first page. I think it still reads the same. I haven't read it since I got in, but I think it read that if you take 3 core electives and then you can choose whatever else you want to do. And then it showed like the profiles of students. And I remember going through it and I went to my mom and said, this is what I'm going to do. And this is exactly who I am, because it was so interdisciplinary. It had 3 courses. One was on economy, one on culture, one on governance. And then it said, do whatever else you want to do. And you can go to any of Columbia's schools and, get that exposure. And that was extremely fascinating to me. So I think the fact that it was flexible was one of the things that drew me to it. But at the same time, it gave me all the skills that any other international relations program was going to give me. So for me, it was a perfect mix.
Yes, and thank you. I think we're one of the more, or perhaps the most flexible MA programs, certainly in the area of generally global studies, international relations. Although we're very explicit in referring to ourselves as global thought, and not those other, not international relations or international affairs, because we have such a capacious understanding of the global. So Junji, let me throw that to you. What first drew you to CGT over other MA programs?
Thank you, Sarah. And first of all, let me also say thank you for including me in this conversation. And it's certainly an honor to be acknowledged as an example alum like Shagun, like an ideal global thinker of some capacity. So truly an honor. For me, it was really love at first sight. I know Laura loves bringing this up, but on my application, I started off by saying, "Our world is on fire," quoting Greta Thunberg. And that's sort of the mindset I came in. I knew this world has a lot of problems. But before I went to global thought, that's where I'm at. I know things need fixing, but after global thought, it sort of gave me the capacity to think about how am I going to change it? How am I going to do it? And that's the more practical aspect for me going into a graduate program, which is to sort of develop the capacity and gather all the skills necessary to think about your position in the world and how you're going to make a change. And of course, also to set you apart in a very competitive market. And like Shagun, I'm also a very interdisciplinary person, and that has been my disposition. As an undergraduate student, I had like 4 majors. I studied humanities. My focus was on religion, but the other half of me was in environmental policy and human geography. So looking for a graduate program, I was hoping to find something that would give me the opportunity to advance these different interests further and to see what Colombia can offer me. So definitely another part that attracted me to global thought, like Shagun, was the flexibility.
Thank you, Junji. And yes, I think, all of our students come to CGT with an interest in solving global problems, right? And one of the things that we say, and you'll probably hear this again in this webinar, is, you don't necessarily graduate with the solutions to those problems, but you graduate knowing how to ask the right questions, right? So we've touched on this a bit already, but let's dig down a bit into a bit more detail about what makes CGT unique. So I'm gonna throw that out to Laura first, because she's been with CGT a long time. So Laura, what makes CGT unique?
Well, thank you, Sarah. And it's just so wonderful to be here with everyone today. I wish we could see our participants, but it's wonderful to reunite with Shagun and Junjie. And so, I think that probably through this brief conversation, you've already gotten a sense of what makes the CGT unique, just in terms of the types of students that we bring in, and their interests, which are broad and connected, and they think outside the box. They're pushing against the walls of different disciplinary boxes that they've been working within as undergraduates or through their studies. And they're very anxious to work across those boxes, both in terms of their own work, but also in terms of the kinds of conversations that they have with their classmates. Because imagine a class built of a Shogun, a Junjie, and then, you know, people with different regional expertise, people with different disciplinary expertise, people with from all different parts of the world and different life experiences. And imagine the kinds of conversations you're going to have about our world today, situated from all those individuals' local experiences and perspectives. So I would say that our approach makes us unique, but I think that because of our approach, we draw these amazing students, and that is really what makes us special.
Yeah, and just to echo Laura, I mean, you know, the students at CGT learn from each other, and we very much encourage that in the way we structure our program. And that's one of the things, you know, I think from the very beginning of this semester, our students were already saying, right, how excited they were to be in this cohort of, you know, students from all over the world, right, who also had really diverse disciplinary backgrounds, but a shared interest in, again, asking those questions about how you might solve global problems, right? So Junjie, can you tell us what you think makes CGT unique?
You know, I'm speaking about this from a smaller cohort, but I definitely feel like the intellectual bond is something that I will treasure. And, you know, in conversations with folks from other programs at Columbia and in other universities, and Shagun, maybe you can testify, some of our mutual friends would echo that their programs are perhaps a little less thoughtful. They would have less of a social space, less of an intentional discussion of a lot of the issues that we cover. And now going into the workforce, you know, I realize what a rarity it is to step back and investigate the questions of globality. I think that's the word we used in the opening seminar some years ago, or just this global existence that's woven into our day-to-day. It's truly rare for me to have an opportunity and develop intellectual bonds and use this understanding as the foundational framework, basic understanding to investigate your day-to-day. That's what I think sets global thought apart from perhaps we can call the more historic programs. And I feel like we were a social cohort. We spent a lot of time hanging out. And now having graduated, you know people from virtually all continents other than Antarctica, maybe in the future, doing all sorts of different things in all kinds of fields you can think of. And so I think global thought, to me, it's the social aspect, it's the community aspect that makes it unique.
Could I just throw in one quick comment? Junjie is the class of 2021. So this is our class that we were in the middle of the pandemic, and a lot of our work was hybrid. We started with a small group on campus. By the end of the year, they were all there. It explains it was a cohort of 18, right? But it was amazing, the bonds and the connections that were built in that year, even during the pandemic year. So many students had this experience where they were alone in their rooms, and that is the opposite experience that we had that particular year. Just wanted to throw that in for context.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to those, to that sense of community that we have. These two amazing alumni who, you know, as soon as we asked, "Are you willing to participate in this panel?" said, "Yes, of course." Right? I love to help. I love to help CGT, and I would love to let other prospective students know about this program. So Shagun, can you tell us what you find unique about CGT?
Sure. I mean, just to obviously echo what everyone said, the sense of community is unparalleled. I don't know how you do it when you select students, because it's baffling to me that year after year, you're selecting people who have similar ideologies. Rec and I, for example, were not in the same cohort. But whenever we're in the same city, we'll always hang out, and we've become friends outside of CGT. And it's a lot to do with the fact that, you know, we have such shared common values. common ways of like investigating problems. We've discussed like work issues, personal issues, and it's always because we have like similar ways of thinking and the similar training that we've got. So there's something to be said about the kind of cohort that's selected, and the kind of, you know, intellectual conversation that you can have in class and outside of it. I think I deeply, deeply value the relationships I have with everyone from my cohort. I'm still close to so many of them. We always, like, if you're in the city with someone from CGT there, like, you're going to meet, like, there's no two ways about it. But I think the other thing that, like, again, what I was talking about earlier, the flexibility, people may not realize how important that is. And I'm going to stress on that a little bit more, because I think when we graduated, when I graduated, my cohort graduated, I remember saying this to someone that no two of us had the same degree, if that makes any sense. Our degree documents from Columbia read the same thing, but no two of us studied the same things, because like one of my closest friends at CGT, she only took philosophy classes. She wanted to get into philosophy, do political philosophy, and that's what she did. And that's all her degree was about. I, on the other hand, wanted to do human rights and business. And so I had classes at the business school, at the law school. And so my degree was very oriented towards that. I had friends who wanted to do sustainability. And so they only did classes in sustainability. And the fact that we could do that, the fact that it was kind of like a DIY your degree, which I don't think happens anywhere in the world, but we could do that. We could be like, here's an empty toolbox. Everyone's going to learn how to write. Everyone's going to learn how to read. Everyone's going to go look at the global from like 3 different lenses at least. But then do what you will. Like, this is an Ivy League institute. Take the classes you want to take, do whatever you want to do. And I think there is something so special about that, because that doesn't exist anywhere in the world. And I think the fact that CGT gives us that platform is incredible.
Yes, and just to echo Shogun, I mean, very broadly, the way our MA is structured is that you take about half your classes are core classes, CGT core classes, and the rest is completely up to you. You know, and you can take potentially any class, graduate level class at Columbia, depending on the requirements of the different schools. But the vast majority of our students get into the classes they want to get into. And it can be, again, you know, they don't have to be explicitly global thought classes. You know, you can take a class in the journalism school, you can take a class, you can take a film class, you can take a philosophy class, right? So our students really mine the Columbia directory of classes, you know, to pursue their interests, right? And, you know, they take different approaches. Some are very focused in terms of, you know, this is what I want to write my essay on, and these are the classes I'm going to take to get there. And others are, you know, just use this as an opportunity to explore what Columbia has to offer. I want to just take 1 second to pause and remind our attendees that we have a Q&A box. So as we've had a couple of questions come up already, but feel free to use that Q&A box throughout as the panelists are talking, to post any questions, because we're leaving 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. And we'll just be answering those questions as you write them in the box as text. So our next question, again, it relates to what we were just talking about. What makes CGT different from an international affairs program or an international relations program? Because I'm, you know, many of our students are exploring those kinds of programs, or, you know, many of our prospective students are exploring those kinds of programs as well. And I'm sure Junjie and Shogun, you were too when you were looking for an MA. So what makes our program different from that type of MA? So Junjie, why don't you go ahead and start?
It's definitely more than an international affairs program. And I think, in my understanding, I mean, we had classes in SIPA, and I think it's with Professor Kian Tashbash. It's sort of a requirement, but we spend a lot of time investigating and questioning the methodologies used in contemporary analysis of international affairs. And to echo what everyone just said before, there's also that additional component where you get to take classes outside of this realm of international affairs, global affairs. And for me, I was studying, using a literary lens to study historic utopian communities, intentional communities, and also taking classes in medical humanities and taking classes in sustainability and environmental policy. I don't think that's, again, the degree of flexibility that's offered in most of the international affairs program.
Yeah, Shagun.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I'm going to just break down like why I think people go to grad school, and then explain why I think this program is like more agreeing with Rack, why this program is a lot more than an international affairs program. I think if you've decided to go to grad school, there should be two reasons why you want to go, mainly broadly. One should be that you want to gain the skills and tools required to get into the workforce, whatever workforce that is, whether that's academic, professional, nonprofit, whatever it is. You need skills and you need tools. The other is to grow your network. You need to know people in the fields that you're doing work in, right? And a lot of times when you're looking at grad school abroad or in a different state that you were born in, it's because you need to grow your network to more than the echo chamber that you were born in, right? The second one is fairly obvious why you should choose Columbia, because it's obviously right in the middle of New York. You have numerous opportunities to do like internships, attend events, be part of the city as it is, living and breathing. But the first part is very important, that you need to be able to gain skills and tools so that wherever you go, whatever job you're doing, you're able to apply something that you've learned, and your skills have to be transferable. When I was looking at grad school and I was looking at international affairs programs, the only thing that was holding me back a little bit from a lot of schools was the focus on like international history. And so if you see a lot of syllabus and a lot of coursework, it was a lot of reading, and there was a heavy focus on like studying the way states were formed or nations were formed, or what are the existing relationships between states and nations. And that's great for one class. But when you graduate from school, you need to have tools which are more than that, which for me included communication. So like, because I work as a consultant, I need to be able to convince people that I'm right. And so I took a lot of classes. I took one class in communication, for example, and it was called Communication for Corporates and Nonprofits. And it was great because I learned how to like write speeches and, write emails, or like even communicate with people at events and things like that. But beyond that, like I took class on consulting. So like, the work that I'm doing now, how do you analyze a case study when you're given something to? And so I think the reason why global thought is more is because it'll give you what a normal international history, affairs, relations degree will give you. We learn all of that. We did a class on global governance. We did a class on global culture. But it's also more, because it's the skills that you need for the work you need to do, wherever it is you're going to do it. You have access to learn those skills. The other thing that I find very special is that it's also not in a way that, just go and find yourself and, you figure out your journey on your own. We have academic advisors who are meeting us almost every week. I mean, Laura knows it. I would live in that office because I was, an undergraduate, just finished, my 3 years in Delhi University. And so I had never learned how to cite, for example, like, articles. I'd never learned that in school. So you have someone who's going to guide you towards it. And, they sent me to the writing center and they said, learn this skill there. Or when you're choosing classes, this is how you go through it. And this is what's going to be helpful for you. So I think that there is support, but at the same time, there's freedom that you need as a grad student to do what you need to do.
Laura, do you want to add anything there about what makes CGT different from IR or international affairs programs?
No, I think that Shagun and Junjie said it perfectly. And I think that Shagun gave us a really good segue to really our conversation, Sarah, too, about other things that make us unique in terms of the ways in which we support students. We don't have a PhD program, so often in graduate schools, within a program where there's a PhD, the MA students sometimes can be they don't receive as much attention, we'll put it that way. And so at Global Thought, our MA program is our program. And so we offer support to our students from the time that they accept our offer. We're in close contact. We give close guidance as students navigate the complexities of an old university like Columbia and identifying those classes, those that flexibility that Junjie and Shagun talked about. That takes some work to figure out, okay, what is that class that I want to take? And so we offer that support. And we also offer support from the inception of the MA essay idea through to, developing a proposal, developing an outline, beginning writing, fixing those citations. And so we have a robust support team that I think is one of the things that also makes us unique, and that you probably wouldn't find in, say, a typical, I'll go back to the first question, international relations or other types of programs that are housed in those more historical departments, as Junjie put it. What would you add, Sarah, in terms of how we support students?
I'm not sure you find this level of support in any MA program that I've, seen firsthand or heard of, to be quite honest. I mean, we really, as Laura mentioned, we start meeting with students to talk about their classes over the summer. So just to emphasize, you have a wide range of choice as to what classes you can take, but we guide you through that process, right? And you do that in consultation with us, which is not to say we say, oh no, you can't take that course, but just in conversation with us, we figure out, what kinds of courses you might be interested in. And we might direct students to classes that they had not, found themselves in the Columbia Directory of Classes. And we have a very intensive MA essay advising process. We have a series of iterative assignments over the course of the year because, a lot of students, I think, come in thinking, oh, I'm just going to do some research and then write it all up at the end, right? But, this is a 10-month program, right? And your thesis, we don't call it a thesis, we call it a capstone essay because it's a bit shorter than a thesis. But that is what you walk away with from this program, right? And we want to make sure that that it's as good as it can possibly be, and that you receive the best advice and guidance that you can, right? And that all of us who advise on the essays, right, have been through this process ourselves many times. How to write a kind of major article, essentially, and so. So we provide support on that from the very beginning. And, we also have an extensive public programming and portfolio and programming that's also very specifically for our students. And so, for instance, later today, our students are going to have lunch with Yasmin Aragas, who's an expert on gender and international relations. And, there are going to be about 15 students who are going to have bagels and be able to chat with Yasmin. We recently had a faculty student lunch over at Faculty House, where our CGT faculty came and talked to students, again, in a more sort of informal atmosphere. We have regular lunchtime seminars with either members of CGT or other faculty at Columbia or beyond that, again, are directed for our students specifically. So, in addition to that, right, we have all kinds of social events that we plan for our students. So we offer a lot of support, both academically, but also in terms of making sure that our students have the opportunity to be engaged with the many scholars and experts at Columbia. So again, I think this is possibly one of the most supportive MA programs that there is. And I only started this summer, and I've been very impressed with the level of sort of as we used to call in the UK, pastoral care. And we meet with our students regularly. So now I want to pivot a bit, since we don't have I do want to get to Q&A, but I know a number of our participants are going to be interested in this, which is for Junjie and Shagun to tell us about your current job and how the MA in Global Thought prepared you for that work and supported you in finding a job. So, Shagun, can you start us off on that?
Sure. I currently wear a lot of hats. And I'm going to talk about each of them and how important they are, because I saw some of the questions in the chat. And so I think those could also help. I currently serve or volunteer as the Director of Global Leadership at One Shared World, and I'm part of that governance board, which is very exciting because to state the obvious, I'm a woman of color and I am very young. And so to be part of like 6 people in a board of governance with like 5 of them who have grandchildren my age, and to be able to sit there and like be part of decision making, and I have voting power and I can veto decisions that we're making, is incredible. I was introduced to them by the chair of the Committee on Global Thought, Vishaka Desai, who is my mentor, and I look up to her for everything. But she had sent an email to my entire cohort saying there's this new organization that's coming up. Does anyone want to volunteer? This was in the wake of the pandemic, so this was March 2020. We were very confused about what was happening. The pandemic was very new at the time, and I just joined it because I was an international student living in New York. I had no family there. So I was like, you know what? I need to meet new people. Otherwise, I'm going to just be in a shell, and that's not safe. I've been with them for more than 2.5 years now. I represent them globally. I've been on CNN International talking about our work. I've been on panels with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, Dr. Tedros from the WHO. Very recently, I was talking to Jamshed Godrej, who is the CEO of the Aspen Institute. And so like, it's incredibly, big people doing incredible work. And as a young person, I'm not a foot soldier in those conversations. I'm not just implementing things. I'm an equal party who's contributing, taking decisions, and bringing whatever I have learned. So CGT was fundamental in obviously introducing me to an organization like that. But also, I wouldn't be able to speak, all the things that I speak with the confidence that I speak if I hadn't taken the classes that I took. And it's not about what you learned in the class in terms of the text. It was about the fact that we had to read and go before every class. I remember there were weeks where I was reading like a book for a class for a week. And while doing it, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? But that trained me. So now whenever I'm in a room having a conversation, I'm ready to go because I know what to read beforehand. I know what questions to ask. And so I kind of think of all of our CGT classes, especially the core classes that we took, were kind of like that. They were like, panelist conversations, because we're such a small group where all of us were just interacting with the professor and just learning to have our own opinions, stand by them. There were times that I've had like, heated debates in class with students or with professors about whether I agree or disagree about something. So it gave a lot of life to who I am as a person. The second thing that I do is I manage global programs for WeDo. We are a nonprofit working in women's leadership and development across the world. We have presence in more than 92 countries right now. And we're registered in the UK, but also in Thailand. And I run a lot of mentorship programs for women across the world. And in everything that I do, when it's program design oriented, it's kind of like learning how to be like, what is going to serve people? What is the stakeholder analysis that we have to do, right? And so again, a lot of the tools that I am employing now, whether that's in terms of evaluation, so monitoring and evaluation related tools, communication related tools, or whether that's even reporting and writing tools, were things that we learned while, for example, designing our MA essay, but also in the individual classes that I took outside of the core electives. So I definitely think that was really helpful. The third thing that I'm doing is as being a research fellow. And so I'm, writing and researching. I published some work. And I have been invited to guest lecture after that. But what's really exciting is that that's not limited to Columbia. So I've guest lectured at Goucher College, at Brandeis University, but also most recently at the University of South Korea, which was insane because I didn't know that they knew I existed. But someone had read my work and they were like, you know what, we need you to speak to our students. And the fact that I get to do that and the fact that I get to, share my learnings and my literature is all thanks to the, numerous meetings I had in that CGT office on Riverside Drive, where I just sat down for hours and hours and hours thinking about how do I put my thoughts into action. So to summarize, I would say there are 3 things that I would say CGT has helped me do. One was really think about who I am as a person in the world and what is it that I'm bringing to the world when I'm contributing, whether it's through my speaking engagements, whether it's through my work. So I think that has really helped me find my footing in the different work that I do. the second is the tools that are required to be a person in the world, right? So you can know who you are, but then don't know what to do with it. So the tools I needed were things I learned while designing my MA essay, but also through the different classes I took. And then the support, it's endless. I mean, I think Rack would agree with me that like even today, I think it's been 3 years since I graduated, which is crazy. I still have the same conversations with Laura or with Vishaka or whoever it is when I'm in New York. But even in Delhi, when I'm like, having an existential crisis, I would be like, Laura, I'm going to die. And then she would just get on a call with me and be like, you're not dying, you're fine. Like, do this in your life. And I think that's really helpful because we have this strong sense of community, but it's also with the other alums. I think that Rek and I, for example, again, like I said, we were not in the same cohort, but we've had such great conversations with each other about like our lives, our careers and things. So I think those are the top 3 takeaways that I would have in terms of finding my job and helping me do what I do.
Junjie, what about you? How have you found your experience at CGT has been applied to your career?
So, right now I work as a communications manager here at DC at this place called the Brookings Institution. So it's a think tank. And I think by many measures, it's considered one of the best think tanks out there. So you may ask, what do I do actually as a communications manager? Like Shagun, like everyone on this call, I'm wearing a lot of hats. And that's something I learned to do while in Global Thought, taking like 5 classes, reading 10 different papers in like 2 hours and quickly synthesizing and summarizing the information before going into a meeting. And in my job, I'm responsible for the last line before the thoughts produced in a think tank, if you will, get out there, whether it will end up on the table in the White House or being delivered as a testimony on the Hill or being quoted at an UN assembly or being like simply listened to as a podcast. So what I work to do, what I'm trying to accomplish here at the Brookings Institution is to have reach, impact, and influence for different realms, policy, media, and academia. And the projects I'm overseeing are really broad. And like you mentioned earlier, Sarah, part of what I do is on macroeconomic policy. Part of what I do is on sustainable development. I also do a lot of Africa-focused policy and technology and trade. And what Global Thought allowed me to do is to really split my brain when I need to, and to compartmentalize my mental activities to get to the right information. So for me, what Global Thought has offered me in terms of the technical field of expertise, again, it goes back to the idea of flexibility. It has allowed me to be a jack of all trades and to synthesize and strategize quickly. And, having gone through the intense process of Global Thought and the MA seminar, talking to experts from all different fields, you come out of it with the capacity, with the understanding that people think differently, and you acknowledge that, but you also will be able to stand your ground. And that's, I think, the softer part, the more intangible part that I come out of CGT with, is to be comfortable with ideas and to be able to engage and entertain different opinions, because you will for sure encounter a lot of them outside of school. And more recently, I've been helping to promote this senior fellow, Tony Pippa, at the Brookings Institution, who produced something called Reimagine Rural. And, we had this conversation with Laura some time ago, and we always talk about how local is global in some sense, and global is seen in local. And that's exactly what this podcast is trying to accomplish. If I had not had the training in Global Thought, I would have a hard time comprehending how rural America, how this conversation about rural America, small little towns, like a mining town that's dilapidated, has an impact, has reverberation across what's been happening around the globe and what we can do to solve it. And in the same way, using that as a focal point to to engage in conversations of sustainable development and effective policy. Yeah, I hope that answers the question, Sarah.
Yes, thank you both so much. One thing that we say a lot in CGT is, we teach you how to ask questions, right? We spend a lot of time on that at the beginning of the MA essay process, right? About how to formulate a research question, right? Which is one of those transferable skills, right? That you can use in your career. You might not be coming in with a proposed solution right away, right? But you'll know what kinds of questions to ask. Very quickly, I just want to add, we have, and we posted this in the chat, we have a professional development series at CGT called Careers Without Borders, where, we bring a number of, we have our advisory council members participate, we have our alumni participate at different events. And the different events focus both on sort of strategizing for your career. We also provide quite a bit of, many opportunities for networking. I mean, among our alumni, for one thing, right? So we offer quite a bit of career support in addition to the graduate school's Compass program, which provides a lot of career support as well. So we're running a bit late, so I want to make sure we get to some of the Q&A. Some of these questions, I believe, have been answered in our discussion already. But very quickly, because this is probably a question I know a lot of our attendees have, what makes an application stand out? So I'm going to throw that one over to Laura about what makes an application stand out. And I think I know, I have a sense of how she's going to answer, but why don't you take it away?
Well, we read applications holistically. And so we look at your transcript, we look at your history, your resume, but we also, we put a lot of weight in the statement of purpose and also your writing sample and your letters of recommendation. But in your statement of purpose, I would say that for me personally, that's the most important document, because it tells us why you're interested in global thought. It's your story. It's where you tell us who you are, where you've been, why you're interested in us, what kind of the questions that interest you. And one of the things that we're really looking for is that you really understand what we do. So if we receive an application essay where it really looks like a student is looking for an international studies program or looking for a more narrowly focused policy program, we realize that that's probably not the best fit for that student or for us. And so we look at that. We also look for very strong writing. And so both in the statement and in the writing sample, we want to see that you are able to articulate your ideas, that in the writing sample, you support them with research, with support from other sources. So we're looking for strong writing, strong research skills, a clear view of your understanding of what we are. We're not necessarily looking for some narrow focused idea of what you want to study, but that's okay too, because we help you figure that out while you're with us. And oftentimes students pivot once they get into the program. So it doesn't have to be narrowly focused in that sense, but it definitely needs to give us a sense that you get us, that you get what we do in global thought.
Yeah, so for those of you who are interested in applying, and I hope most of you will, spend some time on our website. Get to know what we're about, and obviously attending this event is a very good way to do that as well. And there's no formula for our application. Those statements can look very different from each other, right? In terms of what your background is and why you're coming to CGT. Although again, yes, we're looking for students who get us, right? Who are curious and engaged, right? And have a kind of capacious understanding of what the global is. So another question that I think some of you might have is, why is the MA in Global Thought a year long, right? How do we manage a year-long MA program? So Laura, why don't you take a stab at that, right? Why is this program structured as a year-long program?
I think it's one of the things that makes us unique, although I'm hearing of more and more kind of 2-semester MA programs these days. And it does make for a very intense year because you're taking we only have a full-time studies. We don't have a part-time option. And so you're taking 15 credits of graduate level coursework each semester, which is very intense. But you leave after 10 months, you leave with a Columbia University master's degree. And so it reduces the expense of the MA, but it also, I think, keeps our group very tightly cohorted, which is something that we value a lot. I think some MAs, give you that option of finishing in the summer or give you that option of finishing in the fall. We want our students in there, some students are writing in different times. We want our students to start together, to go through those different, the process of writing the MA essay and support each other as we support the students, and to finish together. And that's what builds a tightly knit cohort. So those are some of the reasons that we really value the, 2-semester program. Sarah, what would you add? I'm sure I've missed something.
I think it's, even though, yes, you take all these electives, our core program is really structured to be a year long, and each, the two MA seminars that last a year, really one follows the next, and we're very thoughtful about how that works and what we're covering in a given year. And also, something I've been impressed with since I started is it's such a dynamic program, and our curriculum is so dynamic, that that seminar changes year to year, right? Because we want to address in seminar what are the most pressing global issues, and it helps to be able to structure that within a year, and to, Laura and I are putting together the syllabus for next spring for the MA seminar, and we're looking at what we've covered in the fall term seminar, and thinking about how best to complement what students have learned in the spring. So it really is structured around a year in very thoughtful ways. So very, very quickly, because we're running out of time. So if Shagun and Junjie could, spend just a minute explaining what you wish you had known before applying for an MA program. So Junjie, can you go first?
The first thing I would say before you apply, really, in some sense, approach it like applying to a job. Really know what they're about, what they do, what sort of their ethos, if you will, and have conversations with people from that program. Have conversations, if you can arrange it, have conversations with the faculties in that program, and not just one, but perhaps multiple people, and to just see if your intellectual interests and passion align. Because unlike most PhD programs, what CGT can give you is, again, the flexibility. And even though you may have the slightest hesitancy about your area of graduate work, you should factor in some little extra space, some little wiggle room to make that happen, if hopefully the program can allow you to do that. And finally, I'd say a graduate program is a big step in your life. Your life will be different before and after. You will grow up, but in the same time, since you're growing up, just don't be fixed. Don't be too stubborn, if I can say that. Don't be too stubborn in how you will change, who you will become. So there will be, lots of interesting people you're going to meet, and you will have the opportunity to build strong connections. Staying open to that possibility and allow really the program to shape you.
Thank you, Junjie. Shagun, quickly, what do you wish you had known before applying for MA programs?
Sure. So I'll say two things. One is, I think before applying for MA programs, two things that I think a lot of students do, especially if you're from the global South and you're maybe a first generation learner, you're the first person in your family to go abroad, don't self-reject. I did that. I almost didn't apply to Columbia because I was like, I'm never going to get in. There's no way. I come from Delhi University. We don't have training in writing. We've never learned how to cite. Like, I was convinced that there was no way. And Columbia was like a dream school. I was like, you know what, whatever, like, let's just do it. And I got in and I graduated and I did it, and you can do it too. So I think that don't self-reject. Don't cross out names from your list just because you think that, you're the only one doing it. So it's not possible. It's very, very, very possible that you can do all of these great things. The second thing I would say is exactly like Rec, talk to the right people. I know over the past 3 years, I've spoken to dozens of incoming students at the CGT. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're always happy to talk. It's something we're really proud of, is our community. And so I know that if you reach out to any one of us, I can speak on behalf of, I think, all alums. We're happy to respond on chat, get on a call, whatever it is. Focus on your statement of purpose. It doesn't have to be about like you winning the Nobel Prize. It has to be about who you are. What makes you wake up every morning and do what you do. And so I think that's what I really focused on in my essay. But I take 1 second to answer what I knew before I started the MA program, because I saw one of the questions was on that. And I will echo what Rex said, but emphasize on it a bit more. You don't know how much your life is going to change. Your life is going to 1000% flip, and you're not even going to realize it. And the only way to be ready for that is to say yes. I remember when I was at, CGT, there were thousands of opportunities that would come. And I remember I took an on-campus job even before I started CGT. So I started that in August. And I think the program started like middle of August. At the same time, I started working with the Business and Human Rights Resource Center, which is a UN body, which was down on Wall Street. And so I was working 2 jobs and taking 5 graduate classes, and everyone, including Laura and Rebecca at the time and whoever else, was like, you can't do it. It's going to be so much. And I was like, you know what? I get 1 year in New York. I'm going to do all of it, and I'm going to kill myself. Be fine. And it was fine. I survived and I did it. So I'll just say that one thing that I would recommend to you as you go to graduate school is just say yes. Say yes to that coffee that someone asks you for. Say yes to grabbing drinks with your friends. Say yes to auditing a class, even if you're not interested in it. Say yes to internships and opportunities. Say yes to office hours. Capital letters, say yes to office hours. Just say yes, and you'll see where you turn up after a year. It's incredible. I know some people are scared of a 1-year long master's degree. I have a lot of my friends who've done 1-2 year programs, and I just don't see the difference in what they study and what I studied at all. I don't see the difference in the jobs they have and the jobs I have. And so I just feel like, we did it. And so can you. Sorry, Laura, I saw your hand up at some point.
No. I accidentally, I wanted to put the yay button. I couldn't find it. I accidentally raised hand, but and I keep imagining that, you watch those commercials where it says, do not try this at home. Sarah and I are like, please don't take 6 internships. And but you know what, you're right. I think it's that basic attitude of saying yes to the so many, just you could stay on campus, and if you said yes to everything, you would be very, very busy all day, every day, just because of the people who pass through Columbia and all the opportunities before you even venture out into the city, right? So it just has this potential to be this incredible life-changing year, just because of all the opportunities that roll in your direction when you're in New York at Columbia University in the Committee on Global Thought. Mm-hmm.
And one of our electives that's very popular is just that, right? It asks you to go to events on campus or off campus and write reflections on that, right? That as your elective, and students love it. So, I just want to wrap up very quickly because we are over time at this point. This has been a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much to our panelists for generously offering your time this morning or this evening for Shagun. And we will be following up with you after this. After, those of you who registered for this, we will be following up with you and offering you a chance, if you'd like, to have a one-on-one session with me to talk more about the program and the application. And we've also, as you probably have seen, have provided you with a number of links in the chat that can direct you to more sort of nitty-gritty questions about the program or the application process. So I just want to say thank you again to all of you on the panel and to all of you for attending, and we look forward to seeing your applications.
Thank you, everyone. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Junjie. Thank you, Shagun. So wonderful to see you.